that I can do in the node system, and this has been something that I've wanted for years, is I can animate my gradients. Not just the position of the keys, but the colors themselves. So I have this key selected. So color, E is for envelope. Anytime you see an E in Lightwave, it's basically an envelope. It lets you animate that property. So I'm going to click on E and start setting some keys. Okay. And when I scrub through here, you can see on the gradient, I'm animating the color over time, right? But I'm not limited to that. I can animate the alpha, but I'm going to animate the position. Okay. And so now when I scrub through this, it's changing color and it's changing position, right? This allows me to, if I wanted to, I could build a quick little planet and have the water recede so that more land shows, or I could have the water rise and it could just flood the planet. Okay. Again, I can plug in, if I come over here, I can take this key and show the output, and if I want, I can control the position and the color based off of another flow, right? So I can have just about anything driving anything else. One of the nice things is about the node editor is that I can take and use the same type of setup that I was doing before, where I go, okay, this is the textures I'm creating, but then I can take it much farther. I can just start plugging in more nodes. One of the coolest features, and it's only found in Lightwave, and I think this is pretty amazing, is that we've got layer nodes. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a color layer node. And now I'm in my layer system. But it's a node. It's one node. But what I'll do is I'll change the layer type from an image map to a procedural. Okay. We'll give it a color. It's not going to update over here yet because I haven't linked it. And then I'm going to add another layer. And let's set this to marble. Oops, marble. And I'm going to change that to blue. Okay. But remember how I was saying that I could use a procedural texture or an image or a gradient to displace another layer? So I'm going to just grab this turbulence, and I'm going to change the blending mode to texture displacement so that I'm displacing my marble texture based off this gradient. Okay, so now I have two layers. I'm going to close this, and I'm going to feed this into color. So in one node, I have two layers, but I can have unlimited layers like I'm used to doing in the layer system, but I'm doing it all inside of one node, and it makes it that much easier for me to go in and just link it over to another channel instead of having to copy a bunch of layers and go from channel to channel. Okay, so I'm gonna set this aside, and I'm going to actually let's grab another procedural. And I'm going to feed this into color. And I promise to pick something other than blue or yellow, so I'll pick green. I've been using blue and yellow a lot. Okay, and then we'll do orange. Okay, I'm getting creative with my colors now. Okay, so I've got this, but I want to control the placement of this procedural. Well, if I hop over to Modeler, one of the things I did while we were watching that awesome work by the Lightwave users is I created a weight map. Basically, a weight map is a vertex map. It saves information to the vertex, to the point on the object. And so I built a basic weight map that goes from 100% to 0%. Okay? So that information I can use for rigging if I want to place bones in my object, or what I use it for a lot is for surfacing. So I'm going to hop back over to layout, and I'm going to take advantage of that weight map. Now, normally what I would have to do, I'm going to go to vertex map, weight, and pick the name of the weight map. Now, normally what I'd have to do in the layer system is I'd have to create a gradient that's being driven by the weight map, okay? This has never made sense to me because a weight map is a gradient. It's from 0 to 1 or 0 to 100%. So I can bypass the whole gradient building just by plugging into opacity. And now I have where 100% I got that texture and it fades off to 0, right? Now, the first time I plugged this in, I said, oh, wait, but one of the things I just complained about having to build a gradient in the layer system, but one of the nice things about building a gradient for the weight map is that you can go and change the values. You can start off with 0 to 100%, but you can go and start tweaking it. Well, again, I can stay as simple as I want with the node system, or I can just keep adding more functionality. I won't say complexity because I don't think it's very complex. It's just more functionality, add more power to my node editor. So what I'm going to do is go grab a gradient and plug this here. Okay, so now I'm going to feed my weight map for the input of my gradient. So if I open up my gradient, you'll see I no longer have options for input because it's taken up by that node, right? So then I'm going to go ahead and create a simple gradient, and this is what I would do in the node system, sorry, in the layer system. By default, I have to build one of these, okay? So now I have this, and I'm going to plug that into opacity, and I get the same thing, but notice that it's different because I control, using my gradient, I control how much. I start off with the weight map as a base value, but then I can go in and use a gradient to go past that. But what I normally do when I create a weight map that I'm going to use for surfacing, I paint the weight map exactly what I want, right? And so what I have to do in the layer system is go in and try and match the way I built the gradient of the weight map in Modeler, right? So here, if that was the case, I would just click here, bypass the gradient, and get exactly what I was working for. This is a big time saver, and to me, it makes a whole lot more sense. So that's definitely something that you can't do with the layer system. I want to show you a couple more things that are pretty amazing about the node system that I can't do in the layer system. So I'm going to go ahead and clear out this object, and I'm going to load up another really complex object. Okay, it's very complex. It's half of what I just had. And I'm just going to position my camera. Now, one of the things that you'll notice is that my geometry, I'm only seeing one side of it because a polygon only has one side, and it faces in one direction. You can tell it which direction you want to face it in. But you can do a surfacing trick for, let me open up the surface editor. You can do a surfacing trick where you make it double-sided, and then you see the inside of the surface. Now, traditionally, using the layer system, if I surface one side, it duplicates that surface on the other side because, again, it's just one polygon. But what I can do with the node system is add a mixer node, plug that into the color, and say I want my background color to be blue. Sorry, I'm going to keep using blue. And my foreground color to be red. Okay? So let's see what that's going to give us. I'll do a quick render. And what we get is we get solid red, right? Because, again, it's one polygon. That's how Lightwave is going to see it, is one polygon. So what I'm going to do is add a spot info node. This basically gives me specific information about things in my scene or things on my object. And I've got polygon side. I'm going to feed that into opacity. And now I'm controlling what's happening on the back faces of my geometry. Even though there aren't back faces, it's still one flat polygon, right? So I don't have to stop there. What I can do is go and start adding, say, let's go to Crackle. And I'm going to feed that into the background. And I can start going through that entire flow that I was doing where I start blending procedurals and start linking them into the background and foreground color of that. Do that for the front. Now why would this be, what would be the use of this? Well, not everything in 3D needs to have thickness, right? Well, if I were going to do something like this, I wouldn't make it thick. I would make it a single polygon. But in this case, it's the same on both sides. But what about gift wrap, right? If you were going to do gift wrap, usually the inside